Go into a dictionary and look up the team TCU. Under synonyms, you will find the team Washington. Both teams had unprecedented runs to the national title where they got blown out in the national title game to finish as the national runner-up. Then the next year, they lost tons of talent from that national title squad. And then the next year, both those teams took major steps back. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. Ready to break down the Washington Huskies, their first year in the Big Ten, their schedule and record. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below, including our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of our expert picks, some of the best bread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the entire country. You do not want to miss out on that, guys. We want you to take advantage, win big with us today, and take advantage of our weekly newsletters, guys, to maximize your college football experience this year. Tons of exclusive analysis and news that you won't get anywhere else, and we want you to take advantage of it to become a member of our GE Nation. So I know a lot of people took offense last year when we kind of talked about Washington being similar to TCU, but that's exactly what this is. You know, when TCU made the national championship 2 years ago, the Horned Frogs went 13-2 with 6 one-possession wins. Then they lost tons of talent, their quarterback, their top rusher, their top wide receiver, and dropped to 5-7 in 2023. Washington last year, went on that unprecedented run of the national title, 14-1, but had 8 one-possession wins. One of those goes the wrong way, and they're not playing for the game, just like TCU wouldn't have been. They now lose just about everybody from last year's squad, including their head coach. But will they go 5-7, or will they find a way to surprise some people in their first year in the Big Ten? That's the million-dollar question. But we know for one thing's for sure. They're not making the playoff. I can guarantee you that. You take a look at the offense, guys. Everybody's gone. Michael Penix is gone. Dylan Johnson, who rushed for over 1,100 yards, is gone. Their top 8 pass catchers are gone. Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, all gone. And all 5 of their offensive linemen are gone. They bring in Jedd Fisch as the new head coach coming in from Arizona. They do add Will Rogers, a veteran quarterback from Mississippi State, threw for over 12,000 yards and 94 touchdowns in his career, so a great pickup at quarterback. Jonah Coleman comes in after rushing for over 1,200 yards in 2 years at Arizona, coming in at running back. And they do add California's top wide receiver, Jeremiah Hunter, who had 2,100 yards in his 4 years with the Golden Bears. So they've got some talent offensively. They're not going to be completely terrible on that side of the ball, but the offensive line's a major concern. A lot of inexperience there. Some of these guys not even coming into the program until the summer. So how quickly can Washington's offensive line start to gel? Defensively, their defensive coordinator, Steve Belichick. How about that? Tons of experience in the NFL with his dad with the New England Patriots, so a pretty cool hire by Jedd Fisch there. But they lose tons too. They lose tons on that side of the ball, but they do return 3 of their top 5 tacklers, led by Carson Bruner at linebacker. Elijah Jackson is back in the secondary. Arizona transfer Ephesians Prysock comes in the secondary as well. The biggest concern for me for Washington is their defensive line. I think the linebacking core is solid. The secondary is pretty solid, but the defensive line loses all 4 starters from last year. How quickly can they gel? And if you've listened to this, you realize that the major concerns right now are Washington's offensive line and their defensive line. The trenches, the line of scrimmage. And if you cannot win at the line of scrimmage, you will struggle to win games. So how quickly Jedd Fisch can rally his troops and get this team to gel will obviously be very telling and will really dictate how good of a season Washington has in their first year in their new conference. But we all know they're taking a pretty big step back from what we saw last year. Take a look at their schedule. It's not bad. Well, at least at first. They will start 4-0. They'll beat Weber State. They'll beat Eastern Michigan. They'll beat Washington State in the Apple Cup, maintaining that rivalry despite no longer being conference members and conference opponents. They will beat Washington State, though, with a pretty big, not rebuilding year, but just an uncertain year for the Cougars and Oregon State for that matter. And I do think they'll beat Northwestern, who had a great year last season, but like Washington's going to take a major step back. It was a very fortunate team last year, Northwestern was, and now having to make that trek to Seattle, don't think it's going to go well for David Braun's squad. So 4-0, they're looking good. Everybody's like, what's all the worry about? And people go, yeah, we're still contenders, we're fine. But then you look at what they've got after that. Once they get into the bulk of Big Ten play, it is brutal. Playing some of the top teams in the conference. They've got to play Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, and Oregon. 3 of those coming on the road. Their home games are difficult too. USC, not easy. UCLA, Pac-12 members, both teams facing some uncertainty. This is a big, big year for Jed Fish and the Huskies? Can they get to the postseason? That's the million-dollar question. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to lose their next 3 games prior to their bye week. So 4-0 goes to 4-3 very quickly. They will lose to Rutgers in a cross-country trip, going from Seattle to Piscataway in New Jersey to face a Rutgers team that has a very good defense, one that gave up just 21 points per game last year and now returns 8 starters. You've got a Washington team that's going to be facing a lot of questions offensively, going up against a very good defensive team on a very long road trip. None of that bodes well for me. None of that sits well with me. And then you factor in Rutgers' offense should take a big step forward, and that the Scarlet Knights returned the Big Ten's leading rusher from last year and is facing a Washington defense that gave up 148 rushing yards per game and is not going to be very good up front. The whole recipe lines up for a Rutgers victory. So Rutgers gets the win. Washington then hosts Michigan in a conference game in a national title rematch. Michigan obviously won 34-13 last year, but neither team looks the same. Both teams lost their coaches. Both teams lost their quarterback. Both teams lost their running back. Both teams lost tons up front, both on the offensive line and the defensive line. I mean, they're just drastically different teams. But Michigan is in a much better spot. They lose Harbaugh, sure, but they promoted Sharon Moore from offensive coordinator, who coached the final 3 games last year, promoted him to head coach. There's continuity there. Their defense is still going to be one of the best in the country. And I think Alex Orji is going to really get better as the year goes on. Michigan is a better team from top to bottom entering this game. The only thing they don't own is home field advantage, and the Wolverines can overcome that, and they will do it behind the strength of their defense. So Washington loses that national championship rematch, although maybe it's a little bit closer than the 21-point deficit we saw last year. And then they absolutely will lose at Kinnick Stadium in Iowa, one of the most difficult places to play in the country. This Washington offense that I do think is going to have, kind of an inconsistent year, up and down year, going up now against one of the best defenses in the country. A defense that has 8 starters back after giving up just 14.8 points per game. Again, doesn't bode well for the Huskies. It's not going to go well there. So they're going to lose those 3 games. 4-0 to 4-3. They come out of their bye week and they travel to Indiana, an Indiana team that's going to be a lot better than people think. They've got a coach now, Curt Cignetti, that's never had a losing season in his coaching career. They've got a team loaded with transfers. Good transfers, too. Curtis Rourke transferring in from Ohio at quarterback, a veteran QB. They've got a great, underrated wide receiver core and a defense that will surprise you. Lots of experience on the defensive side of the ball. I don't like Washington's odds in this game. Another long road trip for the Huskies down to Bloomington, Indiana, loaded with experience, arguably more experience than Washington, despite the amount of transfers that the Hoosiers are bringing in. Give me Indiana to win this game. They will surprise you this year, no doubt about it. I think they will make a bowl game in their first year under Curt Cignetti. So 4-0 to 4-4, just like that, and the schedule entering the month of November isn't lightening up any. USC, Penn State, UCLA, Oregon, all very difficult games for the Huskies to face. They will lose to USC and Penn State. USC, yes, maybe won't be that great this year. Their first year in the Big Ten, too. Last year's game was great, right? Washington won 52-42 at the Coliseum, a game that featured over 1,080 total yards between the two teams. Washington dominated on the ground, ironically. Battle between Caleb Williams and Michael Penix. It was the Washington run game that stole the show, rushing for 316 yards. But USC has a great quarterback returning in Miller Moss. They've got a much improved defense. Alex Grinch is gone. He was holding that defense back. Now they've got D'Anton Lynn, the former UCLA defensive coordinator that had a top 10 unit with the Bruins last year. He comes in with 9 starters back on defense for USC. I like this USC team a lot better in this spot. I think it's close, just like it was last year. But the Trojans simply have too much on both sides of the ball, and they retain their head coach, which goes a long way. Lincoln Riley's squad gets the job done, and the Huskies lose another. They lose in Penn State in Happy Valley. Another, their first trip to the Happy Valley ever. Rematch of the 2017 Fiesta Bowl, which Penn State won 35-28. But similar to some of the other games we've mentioned, a very tough road environment against one of the best defenses in all the land, and Penn State with 2 new coordinators should see improvement on the offensive side of the ball. Veteran quarterback and Drew Aller, 2 of the best running backs in the country, and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, they don't stand a chance in Happy Valley. They lose that game. They're not looking good. Washington now has to win their last 2 games just to clinch bowl eligibility. I do believe they'll beat UCLA. Look, I think UCLA and Washington are very similar here. 2 teams with a brand new coach. with offenses that might not be as bad as people think, but have major questions on the defensive side of the ball. It's senior day in Seattle, though. Jedd Fisch isn't going to let his guys, even though it's his first year, go out with a loss against a UCLA team that's going to be up and down and faces a very, very, very difficult schedule. Can't help but wonder how beat up the Bruins might be coming in to November 16th. Washington, to me, in this game, though, does own the offensive edge. They might even own the slight defensive edge, home field advantage on their side. They get the win over the Bruins, their former Pac-12 rival, now a Big Ten game, as we know, and they close out the year after a bye week on the road at Oregon. It's funny because Washington has single-handedly ruined Oregon's season each of the last 2 years. Back in 2022, they went in and upset the Ducks in Eugene, ruining their playoff hopes. Last year, Washington beat Oregon not once, but twice. Once in Seattle, then again in the Pac-12 championship, which was a win-and-get-in game for the playoff for both of those teams, and Washington getting the win over the Ducks and making the college football playoff, as we know. But Oregon's loaded, guys. Washington loses so much. Oregon lost a lot too, but Oregon replenished. They kept their head coach. They got Dylan Gabriel. They've got an elite wide receiver core. They are loaded on defense, especially in the secondary. This Oregon team way too good, and I think the Ducks take out a lot of frustration on the Huskies just to kind of show, hey, we are still livid after what's happened the last 2 years. We're going to put a beating on you on our senior day in the season finale. Welcome to the Big Ten for both of you. Oregon's going to act like they've been there for ages. Oregon gets the win, and Washington finishes 5-7. I really feel like this is the most likely case, guys. I don't see any other path. Maybe they beat Indiana on your eyes. Maybe they beat USC. This team will not go above 6-6. I feel pretty confident about that. Too many changes, too much unknown, especially up front in the trenches. New coach, new schemes. It's inevitable this team's going to take a pretty big step back. Again, only 1 or 2 toss-up games on that schedule. 6-6, probably the ceiling. We're going to have them at 5-7, which, go back to our dictionary, is the exact same record TCU had last year. That wasn't done on purpose. It's just the way it played out. This team will be competitive in a handful of these games, but not nearly enough to reach their ultimate goal. TCU, unprecedented run in 2022 with a lot of narrow victories, bounces back in 2023 with a 5-7 record. Washington, unprecedented run, 8 one-possession victories, loses tons, comes back, 5-7 record. The exact same story happening between the Horned Frogs and the Huskies. A disappointing year in Seattle, but should take a big step forward next year as they get more acclimated to Jedd Fisch and more acclimated to life in the Big Ten. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to those expert picks, home to those exclusive newsletters. Do not miss out on those so you can become a member of our GE Nation. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.